Hello learners, my name is Atrey Sinha. I am Academic Officer English from National Institute of Open Schooling. Today we will read the lesson New Good Things from Rubbish, which is included in our secondary English course 202 as lesson number 20. Before starting the lesson, let's have a look at the learning outcomes that are expected from this lesson. So, first of all, after completing this lesson, the learner develops self-awareness about their actions in relation to the wastage and conservation of Earth's resources, suggests different methods of recycling in everyday life. After completing the lesson, the learner recognizes the importance of preventing the wastage of Earth's resources, followed by expresses their views on saving resources. After completing the lesson, the learner justifies the need for recycling and identifies words associated with natural resources. They will also develop a dialogue, identifies and use conjunction, describes the process using the passive voice. Now, as we move on the lesson is about the idea that the earth does not belong only to us and we are responsible for protecting it for future generation. As the pollution grows and people's lifestyles change, the demand for resources such as paper, metal and plastic is increasing. That's why the name of this lesson, the title of this lesson is New Good Things from Rubbish. Now, for this we need more paper for books, notebooks and newspapers, more metal for making vehicles and machines, more plastic for everyday use. If we keep producing new materials every time, we need something, our natural resources, and natural resources such as trees, minerals and fossil fuels, that will gradually get exhausted, and at the same time the amount of waste and garbage will keep increasing, making the earth polluted and unhealthy. Therefore, the author of this lesson stresses the need to control wasteful habits. Instead of throwing things away after use, we should reuse them, use them again in the same form and recycle them. That means convert waste materials into new useful products. For examples, old newspapers can be recycled into new paper. Old metal utensils can be melted and used again. Plastic items can be processed to make other useful products. Now, this lesson raises an important question. Can all kinds of waste be recycled in the same way and with equal profit? The lesson will further discuss which materials can be recycled easily and which are more difficult to recycle. So, let's start the lesson. So, the first paragraph of this lesson starts with that. Recycling rubbish not only helps save money, it also helps the environment. We lessen the pollution that is created by burning rubbish and we save valuable resources. Western countries waste a great deal of the earth's resources. For example, in the USA, about 75,000 trees are felled every week just for printing the Sunday edition of the New York Times. Recycling used paper would easily save these trees. So, the first paragraph I repeat, recycling rubbish not only helps save money, it also helps the environment. We lessen the pollution that is created by burning rubbish and we save valuable resources. Western countries waste a great deal of the earth's resources. For example, in the USA, about 75,000 trees are felled every week just for printing the Sunday edition of the New York Times. Recycling used paper would easily save these trees. So, the first sentence, recycling rubbish not only helps save money, it also helps the environment. So, recycling is beneficial because it reduces costs and also protects nature. We lessen the pollution that is created by burning rubbish and we save valuable resources. So, when waste is recycled instead of burned, less pollution is produced and natural resources are conserved. Western countries waste a great deal of the Earth's resources. Many developed countries use large amount of natural resources and often waste them. For example, in the USA, about 75,000 trees are felled every week just for printing the Sunday edition of the New York Times. So, when this text was written at that time in USA, about 75,000, that means a huge number of trees are cut down every week to produce newspapers. Recycling used paper would easily save these trees. So, if old paper is recycled, fewer trees would need to be cut down. So, now this is about the first paragraph. Now, move on to the second paragraph. Many countries encourage recycling and new technology allows more waste to be reused. Most of the world's rubbish can be reused: paper, metals, glass and even some plastics. So, many countries encourage recycling and new technology allows more waste to be reused. So, governments promotes recycling and modern technology helps convert more waste into useful products. Most of the world's rubbish can be reused: paper, metals, glass and even some plastic. So, most of the world's rubbish can be used. So, many common waste materials like paper, metals, glass and even some plastics, these are the common waste materials, and those can be recycled and used again and again. So, in this part, in this two paragraph, we have learned that reusing rubbish is one of the important ways of reducing pollution. Rubbish which is not reused is disposed of by burning, and this leads to pollution. The cutting down of thousands of trees for the purpose of printing newspapers leads to a waste of the Earth's resources. Instead, if we reuse the most commonly used paper, metal, glass and plastic objects, it will help us to save natural resources and our environment. Now, moving on to the next part. The first paragraph of this part goes like that. Plastic is one of the most difficult substances to recycle because it comes in so many varieties. Some plastic bottles, for example, consist of 6 layers of different types of plastic, each designed to give the bottle certain qualities: shape, strength, flexibility, and as yet there is no simple way to turn an old plastic bottle into a new one. So, in this paragraph we have seen that plastic recycling is difficult because there are many different kinds of plastic. So, plastic is one of the most difficult substances to recycle because it comes in so many varieties. Some plastic bottles, for example, consist of 6 layers of different types of plastics. So, some bottles are made from several layers of different plastics and each designed to give the bottle certain qualities: shape, strength and flexibility. So, each layer serves a specific purpose, such as making the bottle strong or flexible. And as yet there is no simple way to turn an old plastic bottle into a new one. So, at present, currently, recycling plastic bottles into new bottles is not easy. Moving on, plastic scrap can only be turned into a product of lower quality. A plastic might be cleaned, cut into very tiny pieces and used to stuff seat cushions. A mixture of plastic waste can be recycled into plastic timber and used to make durable fencing. But a lot of plastic waste still has to be thrown away. So, plastic scrap can only be turned into a product of lower quality. Recycled plastic often cannot be used to make products of the same quality. A plastic might be cleaned, cut into very tiny pieces and used to stuff seat cushions. So, recycled plastics can be used as filling material inside cushions. A mixture of plastic waste can be recycled into plastic timber and used to make durable fencing. So, plastic waste can be converted into artificial wood used for fences, but a lot of plastic waste still has to be thrown away. So, despite recycling efforts, much plastic still ends up as waste. Moving on, Now, as we discussed about the plastic materials, plastic waste, now we are moving on to the metals waste. So, the paragraph goes like that: metals are different. Any car on the road today will consist in part of earlier cars that have been scrapped and recycled into new steel and other metals. So, this paragraph is saying that metals are different. So, unlike plastic, metals are easier to recycle. Any cars on the road today will consist in part of earlier cars that have been scrapped and recycled. So, this sentence is saying that new cars often contain metal recycled from old vehicles and into new steel and other metals. So, old metal is melted and transformed into new products. Moving on, the more valuable the metal like gold and silver, the more it pays to recycle it. Aluminium is worth recycling because extracting it from bauxite consumes a huge amount of electricity. Since most aluminium today is recycled, the energy used to make aluminium has fallen by a quarter since the early 1970s. So, this paragraph is saying that recycling precious metals is profitable because they are expensive. The more valuable the metal like gold and silver, the more it pays to recycle it. Aluminium is worth recycling because extracting it from bauxite consumes a huge amount of electricity. So, producing new aluminium requires a lot of energy. Since most aluminium today is recycled, the energy used to make aluminium has fallen by a quarter since the early 1970s. So, increased recycling has reduced energy consumption by about 25%. In this part, we have seen that it is not easy to recycle plastic. It is also not possible to make good quality plastic products out of recycled plastic. But it does not mean that plastic is a complete waste after it has been used once. Some of the plastic we use can be reused for filling cushions or recycled for making fences. Metal products can be reused in many ways. Metal recycling not only saves natural resources, but also a lot of electricity and energy. So, this is about the part 2 of this lesson. Now, moving on to the next paragraph, and this paragraph is about glass waste. Glass is also worth recovering. The most sensible method is to use glass bottles as often as possible. In countries which still use milk bottles, the average bottle makes about 30 trips to and from the dairy. So, this paragraph is saying discussing about the glass waste, and it is saying that glass is also worth recovering. So, glass is another material that should be recycled easily and frequently. The most sensible method is to use glass bottles as often as possible. So, reusing glass bottles is the best option. In countries which still use milk bottles, the average bottle makes about 30 trips to and from the dairy. So, a milk bottle can be reused around 30 times before being discarded. Next paragraph, broken glass known as cullet can also be recycled, and many Western countries have bottle banks into which used bottles can be thrown. Usually there are payments. Bottle banks depends on people's goodwill. The success of bottle banks varies widely from country to country. The Swiss and Dutch recover 50% of their glass, while in Britain only 12% is recovered. In India, of course, we sell our bottles which are then reused. So, in this paragraph, it is saying that broken glass pieces, that is called cullet, can be recycled as well. So, broken glass known as cullet can also be recycled. Many Western countries have bottle banks into which used bottles can be thrown. So, special collection of containers are provided for glass recycling in the Western countries. Usually there are payments and people may receive money for returning bottles. Bottle banks depend on people's goodwill and their success depends on citizens' willingly participation. So, the success of bottle banks varies widely from country to country. So recycling rates differ among nations. The Swiss and Dutch recover 50% of their glass. So at the time when this this text is written, at that time Switzerland and Netherlands recycle half of their glass waste, while in Britain only 12% is recovered. Britain recycles as a much smaller percentage, that is 12%. And in India, of course, we sell our bottles which are then reused. In India, used bottles are commonly sold and reused. Now moving on, glass is best separated by colors, since cullet of mixed colors can be used only to make green glass. Broken glass can be remelted in furnaces and then it can easily be shaped into new bottles or other objects. So, in this paragraph it is saying that glass is best separated by color. So, different colored glass should be sorted before recycling. Since cullet of mixed colors can be used only to make green glass, so mixed color glass limits the products that can be made. Then broken glass can be remelted in furnaces, so recycled glass is melted at high temperatures and then it can easily be shaped into new bottles or other objects. So, the melted glass is molded into new products. Now, moving on to the next paragraph, half the world's waste consists of paper. Many countries import waste paper rather than new pulp of their paper mills. Now, we are coming to the paper waste. The waste is pulped, cleaned and bleached to remove most of the ink and dirt before it is turned into new paper in the same way as wood pulp or rags. Japan now makes half its paper by recycling. So, in this paragraph it is saying that half the world's waste consists of paper. So, paper makes up a large portion of global waste. Many countries import waste paper rather than new pulp for their paper mills. Some countries buy old paper for recycling instead of using fresh raw materials. The waste is pulped, cleaned and bleached. So, waste paper is processed to remove impurities, to remove most of the ink and dirt. So, cleaning makes the paper suitable for reuse. Before it is turned into new paper in the same way as wood pulp or rags, the recycled material is then used to manufacture fresh paper. Japan now makes half its paper by recycling. So, around 50% of Japan's paper production comes from recycled paper. Moving on, it is true that in India we generally avoid waste. However, as we enter the 21st century, we are beginning to imitate some of the wasteful habits of the Western countries. This is something that all of us need to think about. So, in this concluding paragraph, the lesson is saying that it is true that in India we generally avoid waste. So, traditionally Indians tended to reuse things and avoid wastage. However, as we enter the 21st century, we are beginning to imitate some of the wasteful habits of the Western countries. So, modern lifestyles are making Indians adopt habits that create more waste. This is something that all of us need to think about. So, the author urges everyone to reflect on their consumption habits and act responsibly. Then in this part we have learned that the best way to save glass is to reuse glass bottles and other glass objects to the maximum. Glass can also be recycled to form new glass objects. Recycling broken glass of mixed colors only produces green colored glass. Therefore, the best way to recycle glass is to separate broken glass by color and then remelt it to produce new glass objects. So, another important material that should be recycled is paper, as half of the world's waste is paper. In general, in India we reuse a lot of things and avoid waste. But in the 21st century, we Indians copy some of the wasteful habits of people in Western countries, such as using more and more disposable paper items for the sake of convenience. Then we should be aware of these changes in our habits and try to control them. All of us should try to check waste in any form. So this is all about the text of this lesson. Now we will move on to the values that are conveyed in this lesson, like environmental awareness, conservation of natural resources, responsible consumption, sustainable living and care for future generation. So in this lesson, the main message of New Good Things from Rubbish is that recycling and reusing waste materials are essential for conserving natural resources, reducing pollution, saving energy and protecting the environment for future generation. So these are the values and messages that we can get from this lesson. The lesson emphasizes that materials such as paper, metal, glass and some plastic should be reused or recycled instead of being thrown away. It encourages people to adopt responsible habits and follow the principles of reduce, reuse and recycle to ensure sustainable use of the earth's resources. Now, in this lesson there are some grammar portion like conjunction. For example, any car on the road today will consist in part of the earlier cars that have been scrapped and recycled into new steel and other metals. Another sentence, plastic is one of the most difficult substances to recycle because it comes in so many varieties. So these two sentences that are there on the slide, these you can notice that each sentences are of two parts, and those two parts are connected with some words like and because. So these two words are functioned as conjunction in these two sentences. So conjunctions are of various types. So one of them is coordinating conjunction that appears in the middle of a sentence without a comma for the same subject like she sang and danced, and with a comma for different subjects like she sang and he danced. So there are two different type of this coordinating conjunction. One is with comma and one is without comma, and we have to look into whether the subjects are same or different, and that is depending on when comma is to be put or not. Now moving on, there are subordinating conjunction that links two sentences or clauses of unequal rank with though, when, where, though, because, since, if, until and till. It appears at the beginning of a sentence with a comma, like though I was tired, I kept working. This is another one thing. Another thing is appears in the middle of a sentence without a comma. I kept working though I was tired. So if you notice that the meaning of those two sentences are same. Though I was tired, I kept working. This is one thing, and I kept working though I was tired. This is the same thing, but the position of the conjunction is changed, followed by the use of comma. So this is the example of subordinating conjunction. So we have done coordinating conjunction and subordinating conjunction. Now we are moving on to the next stage, that is writing. And in writing, in this lesson we have informal letter. So an informal letter is a personal letter written to friends, parents, grandparents, cousins, brothers and sisters. It is written to share news, express feelings, give advice, invite someone, thank someone and congratulate someone. So in our last class we have read the formal letter, now we have read the informal letter. So upon depending on the subject matter, we have to decide whether this letter is to be informal letter or an formal letter. So on the slide you can see an example of an informal letter, the format of an informal letter. This is there in your SLM in this lesson only. So moving on, we have in the writing section we have describing a process. A process description explains how something is made, done or happens. It presents a series of steps in a logical order to achieve a particular result. Use of time or sequence markers like first, second, next, then, after that, subsequently and finally. Then to describe a process we use passive voice, and we should avoid personal opinions while describing a process. These are the things that we have to keep in our mind when we are willing to describe a process, we are writing to describe a process. So, at a glance, this lesson is talking about non-renewable resources are limited and must be conserved. Recycling and reusing materials help protect the earth from pollution. Reuse and recycle are important habits that everyone should develop, and we should use resources carefully and avoid unnecessary wastage. Waste materials such as empty cans, old books, notebooks, broken buckets and utensils can be recycled. Recycling helps save energy, electricity, money, manpower, natural resources, and different materials require different methods of recycling. Some materials are easier and more profitable to recycle than others. Then finally, reducing waste helps conserve resources for future generation. We should avoid wasteful habits and adopt sustainable lifestyles. And we have also learned the principles of reduce, reuse and recycle are essential for environmental protection. And last but not the least, every individual has a responsibility to contribute towards a cleaner and greener earth. So, that's all about the lesson, and we will again meet with another lesson in our next class. Till then, thank you.